So is Gary Bettman making a massive mistake here? There's been a lot of discussion about the format of the NHL playoffs. One pretty big talking point, especially for the past couple of years, has been the prospect of a play-in game. This is something that's been continually shut down, and at the GM's meeting this past week, Bettman said no again, and that a play-in game is a solution for a problem which doesn't exist. How would a play-in game work? Well, I think the best comparison would be the NBA's model. Now, that league's a little different because the playoffs are seeded just 1 to 8 based on conference ranking, but it's pretty interesting how it works. Essentially, things are normal for teams 1 to 7, but if you're seeded 7th through 10th, you've got to play your way into the playoffs. How it works is that the 7th and 8th seeds both play a game. The winner of that goes through and is 7th seeded for the playoffs. The 9th and 10th teams also play. The loser is out, but the winner has a chance to make it if they can beat the loser of the other series. I know that sounds somewhat complicated, but essentially, if you're 7th or 8th seed, you have to win 1 game to make it into the playoffs. If you're 9th or 10th, you have to win 2 straight. What the NHL could do is have the 2 play-in teams go against the wild card teams. How would that work if playoffs started today? So in the East, it would be pretty compelling. Islanders versus Rangers. They're the wild card teams. They only need to win 1. And then Washington and Detroit would be the 2 play-in teams. In the West, it would be Edmonton and Colorado, with the 2 play-in teams being Calgary and Nashville. Those are interesting matchups. Now, there are, of course, other play-in and wild card systems. Some work, some end up resulting in lopsided games like the NFL, I think. The NBA seems most appropriate, and to me at least is the most attractive. Now, I don't know if I would flip a switch and bring this to reality if I could right now. There are obvious benefits. For one, it sets up really interesting storylines. It results in more ticket sales for the NHL, which is a heavily gate-based league. You're having 3 more playoff games with probably jacked up ticket prices, especially if it's a Canadian team. That's a big deal. And I also do think you punish the stragglers at the bottom of the table a bit more. The NHL often has a problem where one conference will be pretty set throughout the season. Last year, that was the East. If there's a downside to being in 7th and 8th seed, it makes later games meaningful, even if you've secured that lower seeded playoff spot. Also, as we saw with Dallas last year, almost in the playoffs, anything can happen. That's both exciting and a bit of a downside. If a team which has fallen behind by like 20 points ends up making it through those 2 games, in a league which really prides itself on grinding down the best of 7 series winners, I can see there being a bit of controversy. But I don't know. I think it would be fun personally. I totally understand the downside, but can you imagine if one of those teams finally won the Stanley Cup? Another argument both for and against is player wear and tear. On one hand, you're giving top seeds even more of a benefit because players are coming in having played a game already, or 2 if you're the number 1 seed, but that's also a lot of hockey. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below. Would you like to see this, or is Bettman right to reject the idea outright? I do like that the NBA seems to be pretty open to changing things. Fairly progressive league. They also announced yesterday, I believe, that they're renaming their trophies. That is worth its own discussion, most likely.